face. It's on the website. Look over my shoulder.
Okay, we're going to call the meeting to order. Everybody can stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Patricia? Here. Courtney?
Here.
Steve?
Here.
Justin?
Here.
Jay?
Here.
Eric?
Yeah.
This time, we want to have a moment of silence for the fallen soldiers of Epic Fury, for our servicemen and women that are out there serving right now. We do have a member of the community that was involved in that, so we would just like to have a moment of silence. At this time, I would like to amend the agenda to add the April 6th council meeting minutes. Motion for that.
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So, approval of the April 6th council meeting minutes, a motion? Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Approval of the April 20th special meeting minutes, motion?
Motion.
Second.
Is that Jay?
Jack,
All in favor, and Courtney second, all in favor?
Aye.
Approval of the April 20th Cal meeting minutes, motion?
Motion.
Justin?
Second.
Jay? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're gonna move on to administrative reports. Mayor's report. Just wanna let everybody know that administration and Councilwoman Anderson met with the Struckman Farms developer. They have asked to present at the next regular council meeting on June 1st with part of their plan. So they will be on as a business item. Today, administration met with the team of Estates at Cider Crossing. Councilman Fox and Miller were present. Sorry about that. They have made some changes to their plans, which was nice because they listened to what the community wanted and they added some great features to their plan. They would like to present that at the next Cal meeting on the 18th. Dustin said, that was fine. They've also asked us to table their third reading tonight. So when it gets to that, we'll make a motion to table.
So just to be clear, if we make a motion to table, then that's us tabling it. Won't that interfere with that due process? If they don't table it, or will it be tabled on their
On their
request?
behalf.
I just
Yeah.
want to make sure that
Yes, on
it's
their behalf.
understood. Okay.
I told him I would do that for him.
And that's okay with, legally, that's okay for us?
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Okay, our first farmer vendor market is this Saturday from on the 9th from 10 to 1. It's out here in the field beside the building. Come out and support our local vendors. We are collecting food items for the food packs that helps feed kids from Scioto and West on the weekends. So there's a flyer that's out there that lists items that they're looking for. So we would like to collect as much as we can for them. I did want to read something in regards to the, and I appreciate all the emails I tried to answer, almost all of them that was sent to me, regarding the voting on 2024-07. This came up quite a few months ago, and as a public record, and our attorney looked into this, and we have that written email that's from December 9th, 2025. I'd like to read that to you.
Did that get waived? Because Bill
Yeah.
told me that we had to waive it unanimously for it to be read.
He gave it to me and told me to read it.
Thank you. I just wanted to get that on the record because he had said the other way on the record. Thank
Yes.
you.
Okay, this is regarding requirements for a 3/4 vote to be effective. Dear Mayor Geiger, you have requested a legal opinion on whether a 4-to-1 affirmative vote by council to waive the requirement that a proposed ordinance be read 3 separate times is effective under Ohio law when council is reduced to 5 members by a vacancy. My review of the law in cases interpreting quorum requirements leads me to conclude that such vote is effective. Ohio Revised Code 731.17, passage of ordinances and resolutions require a vote by 3/4 of the body to waive the 3 reading requirements for ordinances. The statute refers to the legislative body member using the phrase "its members," which indicates that such a calculation should be made using the actual members of the body. When the body is reduced to 5 members due to a resignation, a 4-to-1 vote would satisfy the 3/4 threshold requirement for waiving the 3 reading requirement. As a 4-to-1 vote translates to 80% of the members voting in favor, a percentage in excess of the 75% requirement imposed by the 3/4 rule. While not directly on point, legal interpretations of Ohio's quorum law support this conclusion. Ohio courts have interpreted quorum rules as being calculated based on the majority of the remaining elected and qualified officials. State XREL.Powers versus Curtis, 2003-Ohio-6104, 13th 12th District citing State versus AG, or State AG versus or 61 Ohio Street, 384, 386, 1899. When a seat is vacant, such calculations is made on the basis of the remaining members and not on the possible members. And he quotes State D. Alton versus Davis, 5 Ohio Ave, 4346, 6th District, 1915. The existence of a vacancy did not prevent the transaction of business by the City Council so long as legal quorum remained. Based on this review, the vote in question was conducted according to law and thus ineffective. So yes, that's all I wanted to read on that. You're welcome. Village Solicitor's Report.
Nothing to report today.
Okay. Everybody, this is Matt. Bill is out, so Matt is here to fill his shoes. Police Chief's Report.
Just a couple things. First thing, monthly reports will be sent out at the next committee of the whole meeting. Our new Officer Barnett, is doing a good job during his training period. He's moving along well. Pick him back up where he left off at. Had a meeting with councilpersons, Mr. Miller and Ms. Anderson, addressing some noise concerns and other items. Also, one thing I want to bring up is, because they'll be coming out here soon, there's been a request of a criminal investigation report that we did. So I just wanted to go over that a little bit. I want to commend Officers Howard, Miller, and Sergeant Barker regarding an investigation of a male adult who traveled from Indiana to try to pick up a juvenile here in Commercial Point. Through hours of investigative work, warrants were filed, and by joint efforts by the FBI, U.S. Marshals, the Ohio Department of Public Safety Computer Crimes Unit, and the Commercial Point Police Department, the suspect was apprehended fairly rapidly. Federal indictments were filed, and the case is pending in federal court at this time.
Thank you.
So, only other thing I want to hit on is this weekend is the fire department doing their flower sale over at the garage there at the center of town where the park is, and that's all I have.
Okay. Any questions for the chief? Village Administrator's Report.
Good evening, all. How are you?
Evening.
So I'll start with Street Department first. Things that have been going on. We have a new position filled. The gentleman's name is Mr. Zach Fout. He started a week ago. He has previous experience and he's working out rather well. So he's hitting the ground running. We will be crack sealing Walker Point Phase 1 this summer. And that is going to include just doing the crack sealing, not an entire seal coat, okay? So that's the goal, is to get that done this summer. We have scheduled street sweeping for the first week of May or the first week of June, depending on availability of the contractor. And we've also scheduled mosquito fogging for either June 30th or June 31st, and that's depending on weather as well. Sir, did I mess up? June 31st? That's wrong, isn't it?
Yeah, June last year. I was doing the song, 30 days after.
You're right. I'm transferring information incorrectly. We'll call it July 1. How's that? And that's weather dependent, okay? We are doing some research, doing some purchasing of new radar speed limit signs, and we're going to start strategically placing those at certain points with the help of the police chief, and we're going to try to encompass that into our subdivision regulations, okay? That's it on the street department as far as I can know. On stormwater, EDG has been doing some engineering and site survey work on the stormwater retention basin work we're going to do with Chestnut Commons. So that's underway. We had a meeting at Sauter Crossing at Creekview with the incident behind the where the storm water came off the field. They're working with their engineering firm to take care of that. So hopefully we'll have some rapid response on that. And in regards to that condition that we've had, and also some of the Chestnut Commons flooding issues, we're revamping our subdivision regulations to address these things, okay, for the future. We don't want to get caught in that in the middle. We do have two stormwater items that are going to get repaired this summer. So one of those is in Chestnut Commons and the other one's in Genoa Crossing. So we'll be doing that this summer. As far as water and wastewater, we're conducting a flow test, 24-hour flow test this week on our east well field. Okay, so we're in high hopes of getting some good numbers there. We are working with EDG concerning our Walker Road lift station and the force main, the old force main that goes from Walker Road all the way down to the wastewater plant. That was built to service Old Town and not much else, and we're way past that now. So we're conducting a study to see what's the best bang for our buck to make sure we don't get undersized again for a while. We're working with the engineering firm for Lot 10 out at Industrial Park. They're going to be getting information together to relocate a valve pit and some telemetry out there. That's going to be in the way of the building for Lot 10.
I'm so sorry, Jim. I'm trying to mute my watch.
We've had a meeting with Charter Communication about the conduit in the industrial park, so that's moving forward. We've got, I had a meeting on the 28th, I believe, with New Ladders Daycare about the new traffic pattern for First Street and Harsh Alley. So we're moving ahead with that and hopefully get that done here soon in the near future. And like Mayor said, we had a meeting today with the estates at Sauter Crossing, and that went rather well. So, any questions?
With the, well, you've already done some of the upgrades and you're doing a flow test with those upgrades, or this is what we had to get a baseline?
No, this is a baseline test. We're going to find out, so the test that was done many, many years ago was just to service the existing plant we have now. Okay, that was just to find out what was needed then. We're now talking about an expansion and for future growth, and that's what we need to know. We need to know exactly what that's capable of doing on the east side of the river.
And once you have that, you'll know what options you could have to increase that, whether it's going with the fingers, going out like Columbus and all that.
Yes.
Do we have a timeline of when you will, I mean, is it something you just run it once, or do you have to run it multiple times?
So we're
Is there a
going,
mean?
so the next step is a 24-hour continuous test, and that will be conducted this week.
And that's full power, 24 hours, no
Yeah,
time?
they're going to try to run it at 2 million a day, which is about 12 to 1,300 gallon a minute for 24 hours, and then they're also monitoring other wells in the area to see how far they drop down. So there's like a cone of influence. Okay, anything else? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Village engineers report.
Ran into traffic.
Okay. Starting out, just a follow-up from last month, you had asked about potholes, bowling alley front.
Yeah.
So, Street Superintendent Struckman, he did get out, he added some patch to those, so we'll keep an eye on them, but hopefully,
Hopefully it
Problems
just doesn't
resolved.
disappear again.
right.
Thank you.
Yes. In terms of plan reviews, so we have been reviewing the Foxfire Phase 5. We just gave them additional comments the end of last week. And then in the industrial park, we have construction plans for review for Lot 9, which is IDI, the developer. Also Lot 7. And we also have the Commercial Point Plaza, the development there off of Welch Road. We're looking at those construction plans as well. Let's see. When a private utility comes into the village and places their lines within our right-of-way, they fill out a right-of-way application. It's on our website, and then submit plans. So we have Lumen Fiber Optic that has submitted a right-of-way application. They're looking to add a buried fiber north and south along State Route 104. And Dave actually, Administrator Riley actually mentioned Charter Spectrum already in the industrial park. I think those are all the new items. Any questions for me? Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Zoning administrators report.
Real quick, just to let you know, we had 44 inspections. In April, we had 10 new builds and 34 accessory structures. We've got 5 pending. And, let's see, it is grass season, and it's getting tall. So I'll be out. You'll find these little neat hangers that hang onto your door, and that means I've been there. So give me a call so we can work out a situation you take care of. I was surprised at how many houses have no residents in them. They must be moving, and honestly, there were in Foxfire is where I found a lot. So that was just surprising. So anyway, any questions?
Thank you, Jim.
Good. I was gonna say we had a bunch to talk about.
Fiscal officers report.
So I attended the meeting with the Rockford Group with regards to the Struckman Farm proposed development. I also attended the meeting with D.R. Horton today on the side of the estates. On April 30th, K-Nova submitted an updated major site plan application. It is in the hands of our zoning inspector. He and our village administrator will be reviewing it tomorrow to make sure that the updated documents are complete and ready to go. I also received on Friday a major site plan for AWS property, which is called Project Cosmos. Jim and Dave will also be reviewing that plan for completeness tomorrow. So depending on how tonight goes, we might be getting back to the mailboxes. So once they're complete, we will have them. Any questions?
We get those packets regardless of how tonight goes.
Well, once they're complete, we have to make sure that they're complete, yes. Okay?
All right, legislative reports. Courtney?
None.
Thank you.
I just want to say to everybody, I mean, I know we all know since we're here, but I think right now, tonight, we're on the precipice of taking a step forward towards what I would say is what I feel like is the mandate of the community, if I'm reading the tea leaves correctly. And the only thing that I would say is, if the moratorium goes through tonight, that will feel like a win, but it needs to be the ground floor, the start of our work, the beginning of community organizing. I've seen leaflets on my door, other things. People are getting out and working to organize as a community, and I think that that's great. But we can't rest once we pass this thing. Just if what we want to do is to stop the more, to stop the data centers, then it starts tonight. So I just want to keep it simple. I want to remind everyone of that, and I just want to say that I'm really encouraged by seeing all of your faces out here and seeing the support that we all have. So thank you. Thank you for being engaged. This is what it's all about.
Patricia?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I have something that I want to read. It might seem kind of stern, but it needs to be said. Good evening, everyone. I want to be very, very clear with my words. I've heard the concerns from our residents regarding the proposed data centers, and I take them seriously. I was elected to represent this community, and I will do everything in my power to protect the village of Commercial Point. That is my responsibility, and I don't take it lightly. For that reason, I am supporting the 18-month moratorium. We are not going to rush decisions that could have long-term impacts on our village without taking the time to fully understand them. But just as important as what we decide is how we conduct ourselves while making these decisions. That needs to be addressed. The level of unprofessionalism that has been displayed is unacceptable. Rude comments, dismissive behavior, disrespect towards residents, fellow council members, and the mayor has no place here. This is not productive. We cannot win. And it does not reflect the standards this community deserves. We can disagree, and in fact, disagreement is part of the process, but there is a right and a wrong way to do it. We are expected to lead with integrity, respect, and professionalism at all times. Let me also be clear about this. There's absolutely no place for offensive or harmful language, including racial slurs, in this chamber. I'm going to say that again. There is no place for offensive or harmful language, including racial slurs, in this chamber. There is no situation, no frustration, and no explanation that makes it acceptable. If we're going to hold other people accountable, we have to hold ourselves accountable first. That's the standard we need to set. The words we choose matter, and they reflect who we are. I also want to address something very serious. I've been made aware of comments on Facebook that includes threats of harm towards myself, other council members, and the mayor. I've heard the explanations that these may be coming from bots, individuals, people who don't even live in our community. But it still doesn't make it acceptable. Comments that suggest harm or violence are disgusting and deplorable. And they should never be tolerated on any platform. While everyone has the right to free speech, that doesn't mean you're free from consequences. Consequences. Words that promote or suggest harm, they cross the line. But I want to be very clear. Threats of violence, whether it's real or not, will not be taken lightly. I take the safety of myself and my family very seriously, and we will do whatever it takes to protect myself and my community, and that includes involving law enforcement. It's time to be more responsible, more mature, and more focused. We can work through disagreements about the data center issue without resorting to hostility or threats. At the end of the day, we need to focus and refocus on what actually matters, the people of Commercial Point. Every single person here, you guys are what's important. We were elected to serve, not to divide, to lead, not to tear down, and to make decisions that protect and strengthen this village. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia.
Thank you. Eric?
Yeah, there's one of the two up here that have been around for the last 28 months while this happened. I just wanted to speak on the facts that we didn't just sit around for 28 months and do nothing. We actually started what you guys are asking to be done back then, and that's how I came up with the data center legislation that my fellow council members passed, and then the overlay, all the restrictions, that looked at every data center in the United States and picked, I consider 5 pillars of data centers. I picked each one that matches those pillars. There's one in operation that uses less water than the McDonald's down the street. There's many in operations where it's 50 decibels at any property line, and the low frequency is 50 decibels. There's one that mitigates the heat, and we put those all into what we want. And it was going to be in the ordinance, but through the process, our solicitor taught me something pretty interesting that I probably should have learned in civics class, but a resolution is council's direction to the mayor, and the mayor's supposed to get it done. That's what she's elected to do. And then the ordinance is if the resolution isn't getting done. So all those standards are written, they're ready, and our solicitor told me that they're best used at the negotiation table. Because as those things change, resolutions can change pretty fluently. Legislation has a lot more processes because that's the actual enforceable part. But another nice thing is if we have those, that can be the standard that the mayor hands any developer and says, you need to meet these type of standards in your industry, or you're not the type of place we're looking for. We're trying to stop this process of working and then new people come in and don't like the old and say they didn't do anything. Well, we have. It's happened time and time again. When I got in, it was because I thought it was secret and the process was broken. And I told Jay, I said, I'm going to test that process, and before I leave, I'm going to make it better than it is. Been having to do that with all this noise going on. I don't want a data center any more than the next person, but I will tell you that in 2021, I believe, AWS got theirs. That's pretty solid. In 2021, actually in 2020, I believe all those properties were going to be houses, and the people said, no way, that's no way. Too many kids, schools can't handle it. So at the village's request, the landowner developer pivoted and moved towards industrial. I don't know if all of you were around when we were going to have a big old DHL hub, a regional DHL hub at the corner of Durrett and 104. They were going to cul-de-sac, Durrett. I mean, it was a big deal. And the people didn't like that, so they ran them out of town. So they said, well, what do we want now? And in 2024, they made the data center move. And we had, I believe it was, I checked, we had 24 people speak throughout the times. And at the beginning, it was 2 were for it, and that was Mr. Scala and Mr. Moore. And there were 22 against it. I checked the minutes this morning from back then just to make sure my numbers were right. At the end, there were 3 against it, and all the rest came, including the guy from MI that has another phase to build that's to the north. They spoke in favor of it with a caveat. The caveat was that AWS control both properties and build the 12 data centers in the very center. Well, now that can't happen because Amazon is going to build their sandbox and Kano is going to build their sandbox for whatever reasons. But we can still ask for less buildings. I mean, if they would go from, I think that Jan is 8, if they would go down to 5 and shift it north, from the houses that are already there, you guys are going to have like 1,500 feet before the last screen. So we know they have zoning. The ordinance we just passed recognizes those 2 properties as zoned. And that was passed at an emergency, so it's in effect. I don't know about the major site plan. I don't know how that's going to work out. It's above my pay grade. All I know is they have zoning, they have reliance, and even if we find it's a nuisance and they can no longer do it, now my fear is it's a federal takings case. And that's where the letter we got, I think they said it's $54 million currently. I don't know about you, but I don't want to pay $54 million to own 260 acres. When you speak tonight, just keep in mind that 2 of us up here have been involved in this. We can ask for mitigation of the 5 pillars to the best. And that's this point, they can tell us to
5 minutes.
go or not. Yeah, I'm good, I'm good. That was my last thing.
Thank you. Dustin?
Nothing to report.
Jay?
No.
Okay, committee reports, land use committee?
We discussed the safety recommendations for retention ponds, ways to mitigate the risk there. We looked at plans for bike paths. Community response to that seemed generally favorable. And then we discussed some of the logistics and structure of the steering committee for our new comprehensive plan. So that was,
When is your next meeting?
our next meeting is going to be May 13th.
At 6 o'clock?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, for public comments, I just want to remind everybody, you have 5 minutes to speak. Council will not answer any questions. If they want to do that, there is a time in the agenda that gives them to answer your questions. We have Bill Scala.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. Those of you who know me, I'm an incredibly private person, but I'm going to break a couple of my longtime rules here today. First off, I'm going to speak first. I normally like to speak last, but I'm going to speak first. And I'm going to give my real address. I live at 1632 Grenoble in Upper Arlington, Ohio, and I'm doing that for 2 reasons. One, whoever threatened me and my family, I wanted to make sure that everyone has that address, so if anybody wants to come talk to me about it, there I am. And 2, I have lived for the last 10 years about 1,800 feet away from Ohio's first data center complex on the edge of Upper Arlington on Ohio State's campus. You guys can look at it on the aerials. It's right there at North Star and Lane Avenue. Continental Realty just built a beautiful 270-unit apartment complex and office building and mixed-use retail right next door to it. It's only less than 100 feet away from it. But we're also 2,300 feet away from Ohio State's small modular nuclear reactor, but we're not talking about that today, thank God. My kids will deal with that one day. So where we're at right now, I appreciate all the comments that we've been getting from the community. Yes, AWS has pulled out from the second phase, but there are a number of different options. To me, I look at it as a blessing. We are looking to be a lot more nimble. We've heard the concerns of the community. We are looking to, there's a lot of different things we can do, as Councilman Webster said. We would like to bring in the right fit for the community to be a good neighbor. There are uses out there right now that don't require any water, that don't require grid power, that don't make any noise. The closed loop cooling systems are pretty incredible. There's a lot of different things that we can do, and we look forward in the next month. We would like to, and if the council and the village needs longer than that, we are willing to give as much time as possible. We are not trying to ram anything down anyone's throats. We want to be good neighbors, and we are willing to give the village the time it needs to make that happen, and extend the major site plan at our own request as long as the village needs. I ask respectfully that the village table the moratorium tonight, because you guys have a council meeting on June 1st. We submitted our original major site plan on April 1st, and it was certified on April 2nd by the most stringent review of the code. You guys don't owe us it doesn't have to go before council, or we don't need an answer from council until June 2nd. But now that can go before early June, or end of June or early July. But we are willing to give much more time than that. But I say let's take the rest of this month and let's all work cooperatively together. We do not, I know we had to state our position, which we did not want to. Over the last 10 plus years, it's been one of the great joys of my life working in Commercial Point. And the fact that we had to, I know the words threaten litigation, we have not threatened anything. We've been saying that here's the law, and here we're protecting our rights as anybody in this room would do. So we're asking that you get the village, it's not gonna be the easy way, but we think that we can come to a solution amicably with the village, the residents, the township, the schools. The school district, I won't say names, but the school district at the end of last week was suddenly approached us about wanting to monetize the TIF now from our industrial park. So that changes the ballgame. I mean, there's a lot of things that we can do. The fact that Tays Valley is going modular and putting kids, when there's all these resources available, to me is inexcusable. And the fact that they try to put levies on everyone. But there's a lot of things we could do. There's a lot of good that can still come of this, and we want to work with the village. And we do not want to take this fight into the courts, but we will do what we have to do if we're forced to. But that's not what we want. I wanted you guys to hear that from me, that we want to spend the rest of May to work cooperatively. So with that, thank you very much. And we have our air and water experts here to answer questions during legislation. And we have several former directors of the Ohio EPA on call. They were going to be here for the land use meeting, but we were disinvited from that. But we can have them here at the 13th or at the June 1st meeting. We have multiple directors that are on standby. Thank you.
Bruce Moore?
Good evening, Council. 12491 Gibson Road. As most of you know, I am one of the attorneys for K-Nova. Today I'm here just to put a bit of a finer point on what Bill was talking about. We are trying to find a compromise. We've been trying to find a compromise for several months. I know there's a lot of rhetoric that we're trying to rush this through. That's just not the case. We rezoned this over the process of a 5-month period, many public meetings, many council meetings. It's now sat, and then the moratorium comes around. Unfortunately, it was right at the time we're going to develop. So what we have done is we actually offered an offer of compromise on Friday. I didn't hear back on that, so I want to make sure the public is aware that we are attempting to discuss with council and to find a solution. Part of that offer of compromise, in your major site plan review process, you're allowed to assess conditions to protect health, safety, and welfare. But there are some things you cannot do in that major site plan review process. You can't change our density, you can't make us put fewer buildings in, you can't change our building heights. But what we are offering to do are all of those things. We're willing to lower our building heights, we're willing to remove buildings from the site, we're willing to ensure that there is less building under cover from a square footage basis. In addition to that, we're willing to commit to a reduction in energy usage from what was originally proposed, utilization of the state-of-the-art closed-loop cooling system, utilization of backup generators that are Tier 4 emission compliant and contained in noise attenuating enclosures, additional buffering on the south and east property lines, and waiver of our 60-day application window, right? That's our due process for a 60-day window. We're willing to voluntarily waive that. We're willing to provide the village with additional time. We propose 90 days. And the reason we did that is because if you're reviewing our moratorium, if you're reviewing our application without the moratorium, you're actually able to utilize the technical review dollars that are paid for by the developer. So you can expedite your review with your own experts. You hire who you want. You utilize not taxpayer dollars, you utilize the developer dollars. All developers pay for that technical review retainer, which must then be refilled once it's ran out. So all of that can happen, and you can expedite the process. And all we'd ask is that you review it on a more expedited basis. I know that we didn't get a chance to get a response from the village on that, so I would just echo what Bill said. Consider tabling the moratorium. Give us some time to work with your solicitor to put all of that on paper. We're also willing to entertain additional conditions that the village would like us to put in up front. Do your review process, and then if you have other considerations, those can be employed as well. So all we ask is that instead of us forcing the major site plan review process or the village forcing the moratorium, let's work together. We're trying to work together. But we can only go halfway. The village has to come too. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jason Height?
Good evening, 72 Chambers Bay. Let's see. I came up here with this discussion about ordinance 2024-07, which Nancy, you read the statement. I didn't hear who made the legal opinion, but I wanted to read this either way, and also to discuss, you know, you'll hear from a lot of other people on the list behind me, that I've seen a lack, well, okay, I've been here since last summer, okay, coming from many different places, but this is where my wife and I decided to live, okay? Clarity from the developers, the council, I think needs to be made so those of us on the other side of that bench have a clearer picture of what's going on, okay? So what I emailed all of you and Bill today was that I'm addressing you today to respectfully bring a critical procedural defect to the council's attention regarding the passage of ordinance 2024-07. According to official records, this ordinance was introduced, voted on, and adopted as an emergency measure on the exact same day, May 20th, 2024. The recorded vote was 4-1, with one council seat vacant for somebody who resigned 2 weeks prior. While I understand the council's intent was to move quickly, municipal governments is bound by the strict procedural requirements to ensure transparency and proper deliberation. Specifically, section 731-17 of the Ohio Revised Code mandates that every ordinance must be read on 3 different days. State law does allow the council to dispense with this requirement, but it strictly requires affirmative vote at least 3/4 of its members, which I believe there are 6 members that were voted on prior to that meeting that were there. And absent by somebody resigning or somebody not being here because they had other work obligations or whatever obligations, it does not change the composition of the council. It's still a 6-member council. Now, there are provisions in Ohio Revised Code that you guys can vote to make it a 5-member council, but that wasn't done, okay? Understand you didn't pick somebody in the first 30 days, which hadn't expired at that time, and I understand that only 3 of you up here were on the council at that time, 2 that are still council members, okay? Well, 4 affirmative votes achieved on May 20th were sufficient to attach an emergency clause under ORC 731-30. 4 votes simply do not meet that legal threshold to suspend the mandated 3-reading rule. Because the rule was not legally suspended, the same day passage of ordinance 2024, this procedure is effective under Ohio law. If this ordinance is left as is, the village leaves itself exposed to unnecessary legal vulnerability. Therefore, to ensure full compliance with Ohio Revised Code and to protect the integrity of this council's actions, I respectfully request that the council formally acknowledge this procedural error, void the May 20th passage, and restart the legislative process for ordinance 2024-07 so it can be properly read across 3 separate meetings. Okay, that's what I've heard from residents here is they want to have this heard. And I would go beyond just the data centers or the rezoning. I think anything go in front of the council as far as changing the makeup of this village would be appropriate. And I do believe, in my opinion, that the 18-month moratorium would be great for you to do not only the relook data centers, but relook at that long-range plan so when developers come in, they know what they can do. I think, unlike what was mentioned earlier, you might want to put codes in there that can mitigate data centers if they go forward. And again, this ordinance only identifies one of those 2 data centers that are legal to go forward according to your codes. So when you go through this 18 months, or if it finishes early, make sure that if they go forward, that you put the proper mitigation the village is looking for. Thank you.
Chris Denny?
Mayor and members of the council, my name is Chris Denny and I live at 319 Adrian Court in Walker Point. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. My wife and our young son and I moved to Commercial Point 4 years ago. I work in Columbus, but we chose to buy our home here because we wanted something special for our family. A safe, beautiful, and healthy place for our child to grow up. We wanted quiet nights, clean water, open spaces, safe streets, clean, fresh air, and a community that puts families first. That is why I strongly support the proposed 18-month moratorium on new approvals and construction of data centers. This moratorium is not about stopping growth. It is about slowing down long enough to make informed, responsible decisions, especially when the consequences are permanent. Data centers are presented as economically beneficial to communities. They do provide short-term construction jobs, but once they are built, they employ very few people long-term. Investigations here in Ohio have found facilities employing as few as 25 permanent employees. Data centers have also been shown to significantly increase utility costs per resident. While communities are giving away land, infrastructure, and tax revenue, the return per job is often extraordinarily low. Those same public resources could instead support development that creates sustained employment and strengthens local businesses and families. Even more importantly are environmental impacts, starting with water. Large data centers can consume up to 5 million gallons of water per day. That is the same as the daily water usage of 10 to 50,000 of people in a town. For a growing community like Commercial Point, that kind of industrial water use puts real pressure on our wells, our municipal systems, and ultimately our residents' costs. Beyond usage, data centers often release wastewater from cooling systems containing chemical additives such as biocides, corrosive inhibitors, and heavy metals. Many of these are considered forever chemicals that will always impact our water supplies and our ecosystems. Third, noise and air pollution. Data centers rely on generators to ensure continuous power. These generators release exhaust containing contaminants into the air. Research shows that people living near data centers face higher levels of air pollution that is linked to asthma, heart disease, and other long-term health risks. Noise is another major concern. Data center noise is not intermittent, it's constant. Cooling fans, transformers, and equipment operate 24 hours a day, and residents near existing facilities describe low-frequency hums that penetrate homes, disrupt sleep, and increase stress, and affect children most of all. An 18-month pause gives Commercial Point time to update zoning rules, strengthen noise and environmental standards, and understand water and utility impacts, and ensure transparency before approving developments that cannot be undone. That should be supported by everyone. My son will live with the decisions made tonight long after the construction crews leave. Data centers may be profitable for huge corporations, but the evidence shows they bring minimal long-term jobs, high resource consumption, higher utility costs, constant noise, and environmental risks to the communities that host them. I urge you to vote yes on the moratorium. Choose careful planning over haste. Choose the future of Commercial Point and of our children over promises that don't hold up to scrutiny. Thank you for your time and your service to this community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sue Harmachek?
Sue Harmachek, 436 Bethpage Boulevard. In 1962, Rachel Carson's book Silent Spring explored the devastating ecological and health impacts of the widespread use of pesticides. Of course, at that time, she was ridiculed and harassed, faced aggressive backlash. However, her book eventually led to the creation of the EPA and the banning of DDT. Who would have thought 64 years later, we're on the precipice again of facing new environment, ecological, and health concerns. This time, it's not pesticides, it's data centers. Once again, those of us who are drawing attention to this new concern are being ridiculed and facing backlash. Data centers require massive amounts of water, we all know that, from cooling at the servers. They have been responsible for local water shortages and contamination around the country. Data centers are increasing the threat of water insecurity. For instance, homeowners in Georgia have complaints about contaminated water in their wells. Southern Georgia right now is experiencing severe wildfires due to drought conditions and water shortages. There's simply not enough water to put these fires out. Residents are claiming the water shortages are due to data centers depleting the aquifers. The American Lung Association in its 2026 State of Air Report has identified data centers as a, quote, newer, rapidly growing source, unquote, of air pollution. The American Lung Association warns that the increased emissions threaten public health. This is a major concern for all of us, but particularly young children, the elderly, and those with chronic lung diseases such as COPD and asthma. The 24/7 low-frequency humming or buzzing sound is disruptive. There is not a barrier around. No windows or walls they can travel through the windows and walls and travel up to 3 miles. It can cause sleep disturbances, migraines, vertigo, and increased stress, to name a few. Most disturbing is the long-term effect these low-frequency noise can cause: cardiovascular disease, stroke, and hearing damage. Many have compared this to the Havana syndrome our U.S. Embassy staff in Cuba experienced in 2016. The Environmental Health Project identifies that light pollution from data centers disrupts the natural circadian rhythm, migration patterns, and habitat development among birds, butterflies, bats, cats, and other nocturnal species. The long-term effects of both the noise and light pollution from data centers can cause stress and decreased quality of life. In other words, an unalienable right to an individual's pursuit of happiness is being disrupted by these data centers. Data centers need massive amounts of energy, which is putting a strain on our local electrical grid. In order to match the demand necessary, energy companies need to continue to upgrade the grid, passing this cost to us, the residential customers. Residential rates are skyrocketing. According to a report by the Environment and Energy Study Institute, they rose 11.5% in 2025 and can jump 40% by 2030 because of the data center demands. Large data centers change local habitats by turning habitats into industrial waste zones, according to the National Wildlife Federation. The massive footprint, as well as the water, air, noise, light pollution, lead to habitat destruction and loss. They deplete our aquifer and streams. They discharge waste into the air and water. This harms the fish and other species, our federally protected bald eagles, which we lovingly name in Foxfire Freddie for freedom and Libby for liberty. Bald eagles, waterfowl, and other species depend on. We're not against data centers. We know they serve a purpose. What we are against is the disregard for the health, welfare, and economic stability of those affected most by developers buying up farmland and building on top of residential areas. They must be regulated. They must be held accountable.
Bob?
Bob Hermsek, 436 Beth Page. That's my wife. Just in case you wondered. Like she said, we are not against data centers. We know they serve a purpose. What we are against is a disregard for the health, welfare, and economic stability of those affected most by developers buying up farmland and building on top of the residential areas. They must be regulated and be held accountable. Developers need to accept responsibility for the health and welfare of the general population and not build these data centers next to homes and deny folks their right to pursuit of happiness. Developers need to pay its share and need to stop getting tax incentives from state and local governments while we carry the burden. Developers should seek out viable alternatives to data centers. In past few years, I have been asked both by the developer and council members what my alternative is. Her alternative. Okay, and I've stated numerous times that a better alternative would be a continuing care facility. There is an existential need for this type of facility in our surrounding area. This would bring more jobs than a data center, less impact on infrastructure, and zero impact on our schools. But no one has explored this option to my knowledge, her knowledge. In conclusion, I understand that the developers will refute each of my claims as they have previously. For this reason, do not rely on the evidence I presented to you, but rather vote yes on the 18-month moratorium resolution that is before you tonight. This will allow you time to do your own research, listen to experts, allow the community input, put together zoning that mitigates as much as possible the issues I addressed, including a cradle-to-grave clause, all of which will make the developers more accountable. Passing this moratorium and doing the hard work the next year and a half will ensure the city of Commercial Point will not experience a silent spring.
Bob, does that vote yes from you or for Susan?
It's-
Matt?
I'm sorry.
She asks me every now and then for some input. I give her some help.
Sorry, Mayor, I couldn't resist.
Said Matt, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I didn't want to mess up your last name.
It's okay.
Okay.
My name's Matt Chavero, a resident of the village of Commercial Point, 410 Colonial Club Road. I'm speaking at the podium today to discuss the impact data centers have on local communities such as ours. I think if everybody reads, public perception of these developers is to that of someone who comes in, buys cheap land, makes big promises, and siphons our resources and tax dollars to build their infrastructure. First, I want to talk about energy demand. According to World Resources Institute, February 17, 2026, article titled, Energy Use to Air Quality, the Many Ways Data Centers Affect U.S. Communities. A single modern AI data center can use as much power as 100,000 homes. That's just one. Many of the larger ones now being built are expected to consume up to 20 times that amount. This adds to concerns about rising power bills across the country. 2025 saw over $60 billion worth of rate increases nationwide. Americans paying almost 10% more on average versus the prior year on their utility bills. AEP Ohio last year introduced a new rate schedule for data centers requiring them to pay up to 85% of energy they subscribe for. So I have questions. Who pays the other 15%? I assume myself and my neighbors will do that. Is this why data centers now are building their own power plants or substations near residential neighborhoods and schools? How will this impact air quality? Sorry, I lost my spot. How will this impact air quality and wildlife? How will the rise in temperature for surrounding communities increase power bills and quality of life for residents? I suppose no one has the answers to those questions right now. According to the Food and Water Watch, in their March 4th, 2026 article titled, The Top 10 Reasons Data Centers Must Be Stopped, they state that data centers use backup diesel power generators for backup during high peak usage on electrical grids. These generators are especially dirty, emitting massive amounts of harmful pollutants like nitrogen oxides. Nitrogen oxides and other air pollutants from diesel generators exacerbate childhood asthma cases and elderly cognitive decline. OpenAI's Stargate project in Saline Township, Michigan is planned to be about 2 million square feet and use 1.4 gigawatts of energy, equivalent to the energy use of 1 million households. That was cited by the Harvard Gazette, why communities pushing back against data centers dated 4/9/2026. According to Google, Meta is partnering with Ookla for a 1.2 gigawatt nuclear reactor in Piketon, Ohio. Is that next for our village? Once the data centers are built, local communities are sidelined regarding input on power generation for these hyperscale data campuses. A perfect example of this comes from our unfortunate neighbors in Hilliard, who are fighting a 228 unit natural gas fuel cell power system, set to be the world's second largest, and 158 backup diesel generators. The approver for this post-build data center project sits with the Ohio Power City Board, with state laws limiting local oversight. So unless someone can tell me differently, my understanding is that once these data centers are built, they can add power generation without local approval or oversight. Does this seem like a problem to anyone else? Next, water consumption and contamination. According to the EESI, Environmental and Energy Study Institute, dated June 25th, 2025, large data centers can consume up to 5 million gallons of water, as much as 10 to 50,000 residents, which I heard somebody cite. Closed loop cooling systems use less water but require even more electricity to run pumps and fans, cited from Ketos.com. I have read that these systems do conserve water, however, when chemicals in this water are recycled, which include salts, minerals, and treatment chemicals, they are returned to the environment in what's called blowdown. These forever chemicals can have a disastrous effect on our drinking water and kill wildlife. The energy needed to run these systems is immense and has a huge impact on the electricity grid. So, conclusion, to save some time, I only spoke about effects the data center have on water, electricity, and air pollution. I left construction nuisance, light pollution, constant noise from cooling systems that will run 24 hours a day, and so much more related to the health of the people who live nearby these massive campuses. Regardless of the financial impact of the village, the county, or the state's bottom line, it is important that our village representation realize that we cannot breathe money into our lungs. We cannot drink money to hydrate. We cannot eat money to fuel our bodies. We need answers to these questions before Pandora's box is open. Thank you.
Justin Baldwin?
Justin Baldwin, 347 Canterbury Road. I learned early in my military career that if I was provided the opportunity to give my opinion, I chose not to. I lost my right to complain later, so that's why I'm here. Good evening, council members, mayor, and residents of Commercial Point. My name is Justin Baldwin, and I'm also a resident of Commercial Point. After more than 22 years of service in the Marine Corps, my family and I chose this town as a place to retire. We could have gone anywhere in the country, but we chose Commercial Point for its peace, safety, and strong sense of community. Men's Club fish fries are a nice added benefit to that as well. Tonight, you're not just hearing from me, you're hearing from community that is increasingly feels that it has not been fully included in decisions that directly affect our homes, our families, and our future. Let me be clear, this is not an argument against progress or technology, but we do need to be honest about what this type of development brings, and just as importantly, where it belongs. A large-scale industrial data center placed directly next to an established residential neighborhood is quite simply the wrong fit for this community. It's also important to separate short-term activity from long-term impact. During construction, there may be temporary jobs and the appearance of economical growth, but that phase ends quickly. What remains is a highly automated facility with relatively few permanent positions, while long-term impacts remain for this community for decades. First, quality of life. Data centers operate 24/7 with large cooling systems, backup generators, and constant mechanical activity. Even with mitigation and fundamental changes, the environment around them. Families move here for peace, stability, and not to live next to a non-stop industrial operation on their doorstep. Second, wildlife and natural habitat. This land is not simply just an empty space. It supports local wildlife and contributes to the character of this area. Large-scale industrial development increases noise, light pollution, and habitat disruption. Once that natural balance is gone, it simply does not return. We already see wildlife here, including nesting bald eagles. That is not incidental, that's a sign of a living ecosystem that deserves serious consideration before it's permanently altered. Third, property values. For most families, their home is their largest investment. Even the perception of industrial encroachment next to residential neighborhoods creates uncertainty in resale value and marketability. That uncertainty alone has consequences for people's financial security and long-term plans. Fourth, infrastructure change. These facilities place enormous continuous demand on the electrical grid and supporting system. That raises a real question. What upgrades are required? Who pays for them? And how are residents protected from being indirectly burdened by those costs? Those answers need to be clear before, not after, the decisions are finalized. We also have to be honest about long-term return to the community. Data centers are highly automated. They do not bring large number of permanent jobs relative to their footprint. So the community absorbs the land use, infrastructure demand, and environmental impacts, while the long-term benefit remains limited. That imbalance matters. There also is a trust issue that cannot be ignored. In the past, non-disclosure agreements were used in connection with projects like this. Regardless of intent, the effect was that the residents felt out of the conversation about their own community. That history matters, not to rehash it, but to ensure it is not repeated. Trust is built with not built with assurances alone. It is rebuilt through transparency, consistency, and meaningful public input before those decisions are locked in. So the question tonight is straightforward. Does this project truly belong directly next to an existing residential neighborhood, or would a more appropriate location reduce conflict risk and long-term impact? If this development is truly beneficial, it should be able to withstand full public scrutiny, open discussion of trade-offs, and careful consideration of siting, not just approval under time pressure. Right now, many residents feel that standard has not been met. So I'm asking you to do three things tonight. Pause this process, reevaluate the proposed location, and recommit to full transparency with the people you represent. Because once it's built, there's no going back. The decision you make will shape this community for decades. This is not just a project, it's about trust, accountability, and preserving the long-term character of Commercial Point. So that's all I have on that issue. I'd also like to bring up something that I have found today. I've also heard grumblings that Foxfire subdivision is a major part of the problem, that this community is in. I would like to say with all due respect, this rhetoric like this fosters decisiveness within the community and stifles any meaningful process. So thank you.
Glenn Kimmel.
Council members and mayor, thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Glenn Kimmel. I live at 436 Open Hills Loop in Foxfire. Most everyone here has spoken about the concerns of placing a data center so close to a residential area, and I share those concerns. However, I want to bring to your attention an additional issue that many may not fully understand: what a construction site of this size will actually look like and the impact it will have on the surrounding community. These concerns relate specifically to the scale of construction activities and the impact they may have on nearby residents and daily community life. Many residents may not be fully aware of what data center construction entails, and I believe it's important to bring these points forward. First thing, early morning concrete slab pours. Data centers require extremely large, continuous concrete slab pours. These pours often begin between the hours of 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. to meet scheduling requirements. A single 500-yard slab pour can require anywhere from 17 to 23 trucks over a 5 to 6 hour period, depending on the contractor's hourly yardage rate. There are only 3 ready-mix suppliers within 15 miles of the proposed site. While an on-site portable batch plant is technically possible, it is unlikely given the volume and duration of concrete work required. This means residents should expect significant overnight truck traffic, engine noise, backup alarms, and lighting during these operations. Traffic impact on Route 104. Anyone who commutes on 104 between the hours of 6 and 8:30 a.m. knows how difficult it already is to turn off the highway from Bethpage. Introducing continuous construction traffic, concrete trucks, heavy equipment deliveries, and contractor vehicles will further strain an already congested corridor. This should raise concerns not only to the delay, but also the safety intersection that is already challenging during peak hours. Third thing, dust and air quality. Residents are familiar with the dust generated during residential construction. However, data center construction involves far more extensive earthwork, grading, and material movement.
The amount of dust produced will be significantly greater, affecting nearby homes, vehicles, and outdoor spaces for an extended period. Without clear mitigation plans, this will have a noticeable impact on quality of life. Noise regulations. I attempted to locate Commercial Point's current construction noise regulations, but was unable to find any ordinance addressing construction activity. This matter should be reviewed by council. Given the scale of this project, 24-hour activity, heavy equipment, concrete operations, and clear and enforceable noise standards are essential to protect residents. We live in a time of rapid technology advancement relating to digital infrastructure supporting AI. Data centers and it's expanding at an unprecedented pace. Who decided that residential areas should become industrialized neighborhoods where the following three factors create a compounding burden on local infrastructure and public health? Noise. Data center cooling fans and chillers run 24/7, 365. This constant low-frequency noise is known as a health hazard. Water. The consumption crisis. If the data centers use water for cooling via evaporation, it will be competing directly with local residents and agriculture. Energy. The grid strain. The energy demand of a single data campus can exceed that of the entire residential population it sits within. This growth is bringing a looming industrial scale risk directly to the doorsteps of not only Foxfire, but all Commercial Point's residents. Each person in this room and all residents of Commercial Point should ask, is it responsible to have a 24-hour industrial facility compete with generators next to a residential area? Would you want to live next to you? A moratorium is not about banning the process, it's about responsible planning. The village needs regulatory framework that puts the health, safety, and well-being of their residents first. I urge you to hit the pause button, do your research, and make sure development serves the residents rather than forcing residents to serve the needs of a data center. In closing, I respectfully ask the council to ensure that these issues are fully evaluated and addressed. Transparency, clear expectations, and enforceable protections are critical when a project of this magnitude is proposed so close to the residential area. Therefore, I urge you to vote in favor of the moratorium. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Hi, Young.
Hi, good evening, council. Good evening, Mayor. I'm Ty Young, and I live at Bethpage, 426 in Foxfire. I want to begin with a simple question for the residents here tonight. By raising your hands, how many of you say no to a data center in Commercial Point? Thank you. I'm asking council to pass the moratorium on data centers, but I'm also asking council to do something else. We need special counsel separate from the council that we had that made this decision with you to look at the zoning sacrifice that you're asking Foxfire to make. We need to fix this sacrifice zoning decision that was made. Because let's be honest, Foxfire did not volunteer to become the village buffer zone. We did not sign up to be the neighborhood that absorbs the noise, lights, construction generator, risk, emergency response burden, property value concerns, public safety questions, so that someone else can call it economic development. That's not progress. That is neighborhood being handed a bill for a decision that it was never meaningfully invited to discuss. And by meaningfully, I mean inviting to discuss to begin with. Were notices sent? How were they sent? Who got them? The process could have moved too fast. It may mean that a second and third readings were waived and canceled before the residents had time to understand what was being placed next to their homes. Silence is not consent when people are kept in the dark, and surprise is not apathy. Residents are upset now because residents are informed now, and that difference matters. I've also heard that Foxfire being discussed almost like a regrettable casualty of this, as if, you know, it's unfortunate that this neighborhood, but maybe the rest of the neighborhood, the village can move forward. But no, I think that's a problem because Foxfire is not collateral damage. Foxfire is Commercial Point. Walker Point is Commercial Point. Chestnut Commons is Commercial Point. Our farms are roads, our ponds are kids, our seniors, our first responders, all of that's Commercial Point. You cannot throw one neighborhood under the bus and still call it community planning. That's not comprehensive plan. That's a seating chart for who gets sacrificed first. I'm asking council to reject that. We also need accountability. If a council member voted for this, motioned it forward, supported the emergency designation, or helped waive readings, then residents deserve more than sympathy after the fact. We deserve ownership, we deserve answers. How exactly were all the residents notified? Were the folks in Foxfire that will be most affected notified meaningfully? Because when the public process is rushed, the facts usually suffer too. And in a decision this large, close enough is not good enough. This is not about a shed or a fence color. This is a hyperscale industrial infrastructure next to homes. We have already heard warnings from other towns, from here in Ohio, Plain City, from a fire chief that described a fire in a data center that took 36 hours to fight, required help from 4 counties and 10 other fire departments, with dozens of calls, 84 calls since they started construction there. So I ask again, what happens if that happens to next to Foxfire? What happens if Route 104 is blocked with water tankers, fire trucks, police, and mutual aid from other departments? Can you tell me now? What happens if smoke, fumes, or evacuation concerns affect families sleeping just beyond that property line? What happens if our local emergency services are tied up for a day and a half, while other families elsewhere in Commercial Point have a heart attack, a crash, or a house fire? Who carries that risk? It's not the developer, it's us. Our first responders do, taxpayers do, and the families closest to their site do. It doesn't cause us to have permanent jobs. We know that. The construction jobs will be there, and then they'll go because these centers are automated. Pass the moratorium, hire the independent counsel to review that ordinance, including the emergency designation and the waived readings. Begin the process of reconsidering or rezoning this property so that a hyperscale data center is not permitted there. And require real public safety and infrastructure review before any future data center proposal is even considered. A bad zoning decision does not become acceptable just because it already happened. If Foxfire was turned into a sacrifice zone through a rushed process, then this council has a duty to fix it, not explain it away, not minimize it. Commercial Point is not empty land on a developer's map. Foxfire is not a buffer zone, and our homes are not collateral damage, and our children are not acceptable risk. Investigate the process, correct the zoning, and before anyone allows this project to move forward, answer one question clearly. If it took 36 hours, 10 fire departments, and 4 counties to fight a data center.
Thank you. Jared Gibbons.
Good evening. My name is Jerry Gibbons. I'm at 426 Bethpage. So I am also a Foxfire resident. So I'm here tonight with questions, not accusations, not personal attacks, just questions. So when a 267-acre data center rezoning appears next to people's homes and the process looks like creatively flexible, residents have to wonder whether the village runs on rules or just vibes. And I checked the code because I've been reading a lot of it, which has been super boring. And unfortunately, because it feels right, does not appear to be in the zoning standard. So the first question I have, how did a failed ordinance resurrect faster than the Lord himself? On April 1, 2024, Council considered Ordinance 2024-02. Site plans missed deadlines, materials changed, residents were chasing a moving target. Then the ordinance failed, it didn't pass. No one made a motion. Village code says a denied rezoning waits 1 year. 1 year, not one business week, not till everybody forgets. 1 year. 2 weeks later, council waived that rule just for K-Nova and gave the applicant 48 hours to refile. I have leftovers in my fridge that were given more time to become a problem. And the reason given was extenuating circumstances and the possibility of eliminating an appeal. That is a quote, which is an interesting reason because usually public process is not redesigned around making accountability less annoying. Then the zoning came back as Ordinance 2024-07, which we've been talking about, the ordinance that ultimately rezoned this land to data center only use. So why was a public protection waived Why was the timeline shaped around the developer's urgent need to refile? Why was the village's own rule treated like optional background music? We deserve answers on that. My second question, and we've been talking about this too, and I respect Solicitor Mattis's opinion, but what was the correct vote requirement? Because on May 6th, council was told by the mayor that 5 of 6 votes were needed to waive the readings by the legislative authority. That same night, Councilmember Wolf resigned, and on May 20th, the ordinance passed 4-1 with the second and third reading waived. So was 4 enough? And I'm not asking for advanced calculus. I'm asking whether 4 is now secretly 5 or something like that. And to be clear, this is not just some dusty quorum question from the Stone Age of 1899 and 1915. This is about whether enough people were physically in the room. This is about the vote threshold. If the law requires 3/4 of the legislative authority, what is the denominator? Is it 6 seats or 5, now that 1 seat was conveniently vacant? Did the resignation change the legal math, or did it just make the numbers more cooperative? Because if vacancies can lower the bar, that feels less like law and more like a coupon code. If 4 votes were sufficient, where is the written legal explanation? We deserve that answer. My third question. Ordinance 2024-07 was declared an emergency, which is a bold word to use for paperwork unless the paperwork is actively on fire. The reason given was commercial opportunity and job creation. But what was the actual emergency? A court deadline, a funding cliff, a health or safety crisis? Was the data center in labor? Or the real crisis was that the developer might have to experience the mild inconvenience of waiting. Because jobs are good is a sentence I agree with, but I also agree that sunshine is pleasant and ice cream sandwiches have value. That does not make either one of them an emergency. Fourth question is, why does this feel like a private developer has his foot on the throat of our village? Site plans missing deadlines, materials changing on a whim, the first ordinance failing, then the 1-year rule was waived, 48 hours to refile, ordinance comes back, readings are waived, passed 4-1 after a resignation, then it was declared an emergency. At every major step, the process bent towards the developer so gracefully, I half expected someone to roll out a yoga mat. So who is this process serving? The people who live here or the applicant? Because from the cheap seats, it looks like the residents got the suggestion box and the developer got the steering wheel. A private developer should not have more leverage here than the residents who will still live here after the ribbon cutting ceremony. And finally, will council support the moratorium? There are too many serious questions to shrug and keep moving. The failed ordinance matters. The missed deadlines matter. The threshold vote matters. The emergency clause matters. And public trust matters. A moratorium gives this village time to breathe, residents to understand what happened, and council time to gather clear answers. We have had enough interpretive dance from the rule book. So I'm asking council to slow down, answer the questions, show the documents, and get independent legal opinion. So vote for the moratorium, please. Thank you.
Spencer Dury? Sorry.
Good evening. Mayor, members of council, my name is Spencer Dierig, and I'm representing the Ohio Environmental Council Action Fund here this evening. Thank you for allowing me to testify on ordinance number 2026-09, establishing an 18-month moratorium on data center development within the village of Commercial Point. My name is Spencer Dierig, and I serve as the Vice President of Government Affairs for the Ohio Environmental Council Action Fund. The OECAF is an organization grounded in science and data whose vision is a clean, healthy Ohio where we empower all communities to thrive in harmony with our environment. We work in a bipartisan nature with local, state, and federal governments to realize this vision. The OEC Action Fund believes that local communities should have the right to informed decisions about data centers. Communities should have the right to make these decisions in the light of full public transparency. Given their many impacts, we believe that data centers should not be built in or near vulnerable communities, public lands, or sensitive wildlife habitats. We believe that any data center proposal should be subject to thorough, comprehensive planning and impact analysis. It is for these reasons that the OEC Action Fund supports the passage of Ordinance Number 2026-09 and the establishment of an 18-month data center moratorium within Commercial Point. Hyperscale data centers impose extraordinary demands on the environment and nearby residential communities. These facilities often generate substantial amounts of air pollution, continuous 24/7 noise pollution, and light pollution, all of which may amount to significant health consequences for nearby residents and for wildlife. Residents near data centers report headaches, vertigo, nausea, sleep disturbances, ear pain, and hypertension. At least 2 known bald eagle nesting sites are located in close proximity to Commercial Point. Bald eagles are extremely sensitive to environmental disturbance, especially during breeding season. In addition to air and light pollution, hyperscale data centers generate continuous 24/7 noise pollution. These factors are known to harass and stress bald eagles, leading to nest abandonment. Bald eagles are protected under the Bald and Golden Eagle Protection Act, which makes harming and disturbing bald eagles a federal crime. Hyperscale data centers require massive amounts of water to operate, up to 5 million gallons per day. We should be concerned about the potential for these facilities to negatively impact the sensitive Taze aquifer in the local area. Groundwater withdrawals could substantially lower water levels in private and public drinking water wells, competing with local drinking water and agricultural demands. Now, I did hear earlier that there may be some folks from the Ohio EPA or former Ohio EPA here, so I do want to note that the Ohio EPA is currently, as we speak today, considering a general use permit for data centers in Ohio. What that would mean is that data centers can discharge their wastewater not through a sanitary sewer system, not even through a combined sewer system, but rather directly into our rivers, lakes, and streams. That's the Ohio EPA that we should be taking direction on about the water quality of our local streams and lakes. Surely not. The local communities should have the right to make science-backed, informed decisions about data centers, and to do so in the light of full public transparency. If data centers are built near residential communities or wildlife habitats, extreme due diligence must be exercised prior to construction, and a moratorium gives time to assess all the right questions. At minimum, hyperscale data center proposals should be subject to thorough, comprehensive planning and impact analysis. The OEC Action Fund supports the passage of an 18-month data center moratorium for Commercial Point. Residents deserve a healthy, enjoyable environment and the utmost due diligence regarding potential harm to those values. Commercial Point should be no exception. Thank you so much for considering our testimony.
Thank you. Ricky Baldwin?
Ricky Baldwin, 62 Front Street, Orion, Ohio. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I thought long and hard whether or not I was even going to speak tonight, considering the last time I spoke in front of you, after I left, I felt like I was laughed at and ridiculed by members of the council. And I have done a lot to try to hold respect for all of you, no matter on any differences that we have or any differences of opinions that we have. That being said, I will still continue to uphold that respect. I made a post on Saturday about the threats that have been made against some of you that were very horrendous. I was also asked why I didn't address Commercial Point forums for the same things. So I went through and I looked. I've seen political satires, I've seen name calling, but I have not found one physical threat on any of those forums. The difference is those forums are not ran by elected officials. That shouldn't be tolerated. Yes, it's a big platform, but I'm tired of seeing Commercial Point used as a bunch of clickbait for views and for monetary value, because that's what it's been. I don't see the same actions being taken against Asheville, who just passed a data center. I don't see those same things. It seems like it's just focused on Commercial Point. We all have to live here. This decision tonight is as important to me as it is to everybody else. I'm not for the data centers. I've made that very clear. But what I'm also not for is losing my village to a potential legal action. And I was also asked to silence that as a voice of fear-mongering by members of the council. I won't silence that. It is not fear-mongering. It is an absolute reality that could happen. If we go to a legal situation and we lose,
and we bankrupt our village, what is the plan then? Then we become the township. To be quite honest, this is the only meetings I come to where it's respect, decorum is upheld, people can speak without being rudely interrupted, and motions and waves can be done respectfully and rightly amongst yourselves with right decisions and right conversations without people in the background yelling out what their opinions are like they're part of the boards. I respect that about this council. But we have to find a way to be together on it, including other members, not just the village, but the township. We can't have these kind of things happening online, offline, because at the end of the day, whoever wins, there's still going to be that same fighting amongst us. It's not okay. I'm in the same boat. I've done things on Facebook that's been disrespectful too, but I would never threaten anybody, and I would never allow that to happen. It's rude, and quite honestly, if you run those pages as an elected official, it is quite unbecoming of your office, especially when you use your elected official page to answer some of those things. It's rude, and it's disrespectful, and it should be addressed. Maybe not by this council, but it's at our council and our mayor, and it needs to stop. That's what I wanted to say about that tonight. I respect you guys. I know you guys are working hard to make the right decisions for us. But at the same time, the village does need to know what are the possible repercussions of those decisions. What could happen? Yes, it's not a guarantee we could lose our village, but is that on the table? Absolutely. And we need to know that. Because I, for one, don't want to be township. Otherwise, I would have moved somewhere else. I love Commercial Point. It's where I was raised. It's where my family is being raised. It is most of our legacies, because most of us have been here our entire life. I've also heard that some of the new members of the community that moved here recently were not made aware of what's going on, was not made aware of the data center situation when they were moving into their homes. That is not the council's fault. That is not the mayor's fault. That is your realtor's fault. It is your own research's fault. And I'm not saying that to make enemies. I'm saying that we have to stop blaming our council for every little thing that happens. Things were done in the past that we have to stand by now because it was done. It's reality. It's in motion. Can we stop and pause and fix things and get what we want out of things? Absolutely. But not to the point that we could risk losing where we live. I want us all to think about that. But most importantly, think about all of our actions. Think about all of our words. And if we have a hand in fixing it, fix it. Don't just cry about it. Don't just say, oh, I didn't know. Fix it.
Thank you. Sheriff Herringer?
Hello, my name is Sherry Farringer, and I live at 361 Cherry Hills. That is one of approximately 300 homes that have been built in Foxfire since the beginning of 2024. It was recommended that those of us who chose to speak this evening provide a factual account of our position. I've spent several months dedicating to learning about data centers. Countless hours have passed reading scientific articles and social media posts. I've spoken to people all over the state about this issue and consider myself to be fairly knowledgeable on the subject. Truth is, there's a lot that we don't know. I cannot provide absolute facts about the effects of a data center in Commercial Point or multiple data centers in Commercial Point. We don't know how much power will be used or where it will come from or who will pay for it. We do not know the effects of noise and light pollution on the residents and wildlife. We do not know how much heat will be generated. We don't know how much water will be used or what chemicals it will contain when it is ultimately discharged. We do not know the potential impacts of multiple data centers drawing hundreds of millions of gallons of water from the Taze Aquifer in close proximity to each other in a short time frame. We know nothing about the nebulous financial benefits to Commercial Point. We don't know the details of deals hidden behind a non-disclosure agreement. Facilities the size and magnitude, such as proposed by K-Nova and I imagine Amazon, are relatively new, and there has not been time for long-term studies. To my knowledge, no one in here is an expert on data centers, including the man who has threatened a substantial lawsuit if he doesn't get to build his first one. I gathered questions from my neighbors and submitted them to council. I sent over 30 questions, most of which were to be answered by K-Nova. I have not been given answers.
We residents have asked for a public forum to learn what will literally be in our backyard. We have been ignored by the developer. We have been treated with disdain and contempt by certain council members. We have been lied to by MI and Rockford. We are now imploring this council to pass a moratorium on data centers because there are far too many unanswered questions and we need time for studies. I have brought a printout of 388 people that have signed against it.
Thank you, Sherry. Thank you. I didn't know she was done.
I figured she was and she walked away, so.
Thought she was gonna back out. Michael Stevens?
Good evening, Mayor, council members. I'm Mike Stevens. I'm new to the area. Moved here better than probably 9 months ago now. The data center is going to be in my backyard. Just to let you know, yes, I do oppose it. I am voting. I would like you to vote against them having the data center put in, period. I don't want to see it there, but there is a right and a wrong way to do this. We can do this correctly if it is going to be put in. I would love to stop it, but it's in your all's hands. There is a right way and a wrong way to do this. I know this. I've gone to school. I hold 2 degrees. I've got one in environmental science, safety and health. I have another degree in business marketing. I know there are ways of doing this. I know you can make those generators quieter. You can put up barriers and make these things quieter. The problem that I have right now is that there is not enough visibility with the residents here that what is going on. The plans that I see are pretty freaking scary. There's a lot of buildings going in. I know a lot about data centers. The last person that spoke said, I don't think anybody here is an expert on data centers. Hi, I'm Michael. All my friends are in IT. They run data centers. I know exactly what they are and how they're run. There's a right way and a wrong way to do it. There's a lot of wrong ways that are out there that are doing it, but there are some right ways of doing it. What I would like you to do is just postpone this thing, do some studies, do your homework, just like what we're trying to do here. We're trying to do our homework, get all this stuff together, and make sure that we're doing it correctly. That's my first thing. The second thing is death threats. I've sat like on the other side of like where you guys are on a different committee. Take them very seriously. Prosecute them as soon as you get the information to do so. Vary your daily routes. Yes, I have had death threats against me on another place that I used to be on, and I'm glad I moved away from there. That's the reason why I moved here. All right. Now the thing that I don't really want to bring up, but I have to bring it up because I did see it out there, and it troubles me tremendously. This is not necessarily due to the data center, but is possibly the perception that is out there. I had a big long speech, but you all have heard that speech over and over again at this point. So let's see here. All right, so before I close, I want to address something that many residents have recently become aware of, and one thing that deeply troubles me, and I'd like to get an answer somewhere down the line. We understand that a financial contribution has been made by the developer in support of community events. The 4th of July fireworks donation by, what is it, Canova or? Canova, okay. That troubles me greatly. The reason being, I understand that, contributions are fine, but the perception that's out there with the community, if they see something like that, it can trouble them greatly because they start to think that maybe there's some influence being pushed. Please be very, very, very careful with doing that. I'm not making any accusations. I'm not saying that there's any wrongdoing, because there's a right way and a wrong way of doing that as well. And as far as I'm seeing right now, it was done correctly, so everything is all above scale. But a lot of people see that and they go all half-cocked. What we would like to try to have more of is visibility, communications, and keeping us informed of what is going on as much as you possibly can. I know there's limitations and everything that are out there. But please, that is the best thing that you can do. That's the best way that you can squash rumor mills, is putting the information out there. And with that, I cede my time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. John Maynard.
Cheaters on. John Maynard, 13658 Gibson Road, Asheville, Ohio. Been a resident of this community since 1997. Been in real estate with state governments for almost 41 years. Running real estate program for the state of Ohio, running real estate programs for the county engineer's office, and 8 years studying as a township trustee right here in Soda Township. So I'm not going to speak about the neighborhood impacts of the data centers. I think we've heard that loud and clear from some of the residents. What I want to speak about is legal and facts. Property rights that every person in this room and every citizen of the United States of America has the due right of their property rights that they own and control. And please remember that as we move forward. First, Mayor Geiger and Council, I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak here. It's been this extensive discussion surrounding legal property uses within the village, particularly as it relates to the data centers. I'm here tonight solely as a concerned resident, not elected in no positions. I have no affiliations, financial interest, or involvement with any property owners in this community other than what I and my wife own in this township, in this community. I'd like to briefly outline several critical facts. And let me say that again, facts. Not emotions, not hearsay, not something that's been generated on the internet, that's been downloaded and spoken in chaos, distraction, or fear. Facts that I respectfully urge the village administration and council to consider before taking any action related to this potential moratorium. As I spoke before, 40 years in state, county, and township government agencies, working extensively in the real estate and land use matters. Through that experience, one principle has remained constant. Property rights are fundamental rights protected under the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution and the Ohio Vice Code. I'll say that again. Property rights are fundamental rights protected under the Fifth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution and the Ohio Vice Code. When a property is legally zoned and codified by the government jurisdiction, in this case the Village of Commerce Point, which it has been, the property owner is entitled to develop that land in accordance with its permitted use. They have the right to enjoy their property just as we do as residents, just as we do if we live in a subdivision, or if we live in the country as I do. They still have that right. Just because it may infringe on your enjoyment, your preference cannot infringe on their enjoyment of their property. Regarding the Amazon and Canova properties located on Dirt 104, it appears both properties have been legally zoned by the village for data center use. Legally zoned. Furthermore, Canova has submitted its major site plan, April 1st, as we heard, accompanied by a payment of approximately $534,000 that this village received and deposited. So they've been paid. That major site plan review process is currently underway, as typical with developments of this scale. Comments have already been returned, revisions are ongoing, and statutory review timelines are in the process. In other words, the land use process has formally begun. As a former Assistant Attorney General that I worked with over the last 35 years said, quote, "The bell has been rung." We ran into this same problem, a neighborhood down about 14 miles south of here, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and I'm going to tell you, it did not turn out well for the state agency. It did not turn out well for the state agency. Those property rights were trying to be infringed by the local government. They took it to court, and it was very successful. And, you know, I read the letter that was posted. That is nothing of coercion. That is nothing of intimidation. Those are facts, legal facts, that every person here in this room has a legal position and power to stand on their rights given by the United States Constitution. If the village were to enact a moratorium after the property has been legally zoned, after the major site plan has been accepted and after the property owner has exercised their lawful right to develop, such an action could reasonably be interpreted as an infringement upon the vested property right, potentially constituting a regulatory taking. When we think of a taking, we think of somebody's coming and buying your land, taking something for you, or somebody took something you own. When you have property rights, I look at it as a quiver of an arrow. You have 12 arrows in your quiver. If you take one out, you can fire that, you still have 11. Okay, you are taking a right. It doesn't have to be all their rights, but it is a right that is recognized by the Constitution and the courts. Both federal and state courts, sorry.
Sorry. Teresa Worth. Good evening. Teresa Worth, 415 Cherry Hills Road. We purchased our home in Foxfire Development in June of 2025. We started the process in September of 2024. We even asked MI at the time if what was going to be developed or built behind the property. They responded, just more houses. So a recent email response from a councilman states that the VIP from MI Homes spoke in favor of the plan discussed and the direction council was setting for the future. I just find it quite interesting that the MI isn't sharing this information with prospective buyers. Had we known that, we would not have moved to Commercial Point as we looked at different areas and responses. And I realized that that is not the responsibility of the council to make sure that MI discloses that information. Our home is a generational home, which includes my 81-year-old mother, myself and husband, my son and daughter-in-law, along with my grandchildren who are 13, 11, and 5 years old. My 11-year-old granddaughter has asthma, and we are very concerned about the impacts on her respiratory health. The data center will be within a half a mile from our front door, closer for my other neighbors. According to a new study by Caltech and UC Riverside scientists published online December 9, 2025, the focus of data centers are on the measurement of things like carbon and water usage. This is not what's going to impact the local communities where data centers are being built. Air pollution drifts across county and state lines and create health impacts. The air pollution will be in the form of lung-penetrating fine particles smaller than 2.5 micrometers, along with other federally regulated pollutants, such as nitrogen oxides, are expected to steeply increase. The air pollution will greatly impact residents who live on Dirt Road, along with the residents on 104 who have been here for many years, residents of Cider Crossing and Southern Point, along with Foxfire. We know growth and development are going to happen, and I'm asking you, as the Village Council, to consider the health of the residents of Commercial Point, whether they have been born and raised here in the village or a fourth-generation resident, and not construct a data center close to residential housing. Thank you, Teresa. Corey Wasmus.
Good evening, Council. Corey Wasmus, 12930 Gibson Road. First of all, I want to say it's so encouraging to see this many people from the community show up. I mean, this has been the dream. You know, for the last year, I know many of you that ran. This is what you look forward to, I think. I mean, maybe not all of it, but having people in the room definitely makes it more enjoyable, seeing them face to face. I could say a whole lot about data centers, but what I really want to talk about is exactly the people. I mean, I've heard so many people speak tonight, and it really comes down to our children, our parents, our wife, my wife, or your husband at home, whoever it may be that you care about, you move to this community for, all of you. I mean, you live here. Either you moved here or you stayed here. But with this stuff, you know, it used to be I would come home and, like probably most of you, you like politics. You know, the politics is a dirty word, really. But you come home, you flip on the news, CNN or Fox News. Usually I'd come home and flip on this one and then go to that one, try to get a balance. But I can tell you the last year and a half, I have not barely paid attention to it at all. Because I've realized this is what matters. When you go to somewhere like Foxfire, who It are a lot of new people, but just recently a couple council members showed up. They were invited. I was invited too. And when you get there, it's a little intimidating. You know, you're looking at 30 or 40 people that these decisions directly affect them. But then once you see from where they're feeling hopeless, there's nothing that they can do. But then you start telling them there are things that you can do. You see a glimmer of hope come in their eyes. And then you start feeling, you know, like you're one. And back to the politics thing, growing up, you think, well, we're country and they're city. Or I'm a Republican and they're a Democrat. We're opposites. But then when it comes down to these things that affect every one of us, I don't care. And I know that's typical, well, I don't care what letter's after your name. It's easy to say. But when you get into stuff like this, you really don't. I've met people through this the last year, through this fight or whatever you want to call it. You don't ask them what their politics are. You might find out, you know, happen to look it up on the Board of Elections or come across it and you don't, oh, they're a Democrat or they're a Republican. I would have never guessed because it's the last thing on your mind. This kind of stuff, it's kind of a blessing because it unites the community. Sometimes you need one thing like this to realize, hey, this affects all of us. It doesn't affect Washington, D.C. It doesn't affect the State House in Columbus. It affects us right here in Scioto Township or Commercial Point. So when you get politicians that stand up or attorneys or this or that, and you come into a room thinking one way and you start hearing them talk and you're like, why am I starting to buy this stuff? Why is he starting to change my mind? It's because you forget about what it really matters. What matters is your family, your home, and you realize their job is to do that. Their job is to bring confusion. Their job is to divide you. Their job is to take your hope away. But when you get back home or you walk outside these doors, you look your friends in the eye, some you may have just met. Look at Susan. I just met her not too long ago. I feel like I've known her forever. I saw two people tonight sitting here, but I've known both of them for a while, and I don't know what it is. I thought they knew each other for a while. I didn't know you knew each other. They just met tonight. It's stuff like this that unites you and makes you feel like you've known each other forever. So I just want to say, regardless of your decision tonight, it is about family. It's about friendship, new friends, old friends, whether you're country or city, it doesn't matter. We're all united tonight to look for a better future for all of us. So I'm not going to argue whether you should vote one way or another. I think you all probably know which way you're going to go, but I appreciate you being here, giving us a chance to speak.
Okay, that's all of the citizen comments. Right now, we're gonna move on to business items. You all should have, and I know we discussed this during the budget meeting, the estimate for the cameras, updated cameras at the village office and police garage. The reason I have to bring this to council is because media is requesting half up front, and I have to just get a motion to allow us to pay him that half, which is $4,612. The chief has looked over this, the cameras. We've looked over. Yes.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Motion, second. Okay, roll call. Eric?
No.
Steve?
Yes.
Tricia? Yes. Jay?
Yes.
Courtney?
Yes.
Dustin?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Be on it. The next thing up is our new community authority. I sent the packet to everyone. We have, oh, there he is. We have Adam here, Adam Seeley with Return Graydon. He prepared this for us. He's here to kind of give us a rough overview of it, answer any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council. The new community authority is a tool that's been around since the 1970s.
Can you give us a little volume?
Pardon me?
I can't hear you.
Yeah, sorry. So the new community authority tool has been around since the 1970s. The petition that you all have in front of you was drafted in consultation with Mayor Geiger and Fiscal Officer Wendy Hastings. And it serves as a vehicle for the village to determine the path that the village would like to take for new developments that come into the village. The new community authority is a separate political subdivision entity, so it's separately audited, but it's controlled by a board that is appointed by the village. This is a formal vehicle for the village to put on a developer hat and to direct the investment of the community the way that the village sees fit. And so it starts with a petition, which you have a copy of and have had a chance to review. That petition, once officially filed, starts at a legislative process that includes a public hearing and the nomination of board members. The concept here is that instead of allowing individual developers to come in, request a new community authority establishment, and then have that run and controlled by a developer, the village would require that each new individual economic development or residential, industrial, commercial project invest in the village, buy into the village. So it's a tool that requires that new pays for new. If new developers are coming in and requiring extra services, new roads, new sewer, new water, then that new development should help finance that investment and create a revenue stream for the village to be able to pay for long-term maintenance and upgrades to that infrastructure. So the initial footprint of this NCA is the actually the village town hall and certain other village-owned properties. The NCA will grow as developers petition the village to include themselves. So this is a completely voluntary and with consent program. So it's not the case that the village would be able to impose this NCA absent an actual buy-in from these developers. So this is a tool that, while it has been around since the 1970s, we see communities of all different sizes in Ohio leveraging in the last 3 to 4 years in order to kind of get in front of major residential developments, apartment developments, industrial, commercial, including data center and energy center uses. And by the way, this is not a political statement. This was the first shirt that I pulled out. First shirt I pulled out of the drawer today. So the new community authority establishes a voluntary real property millage that is in addition to the taxes that that would otherwise be paid. And so that's the mechanism for this concept of buying into the village. And the petition sets the maximum parameters. You can think of a new community authority as an HOA that is run through the community rather than through a private HOA. The process requires a specific timing on when the petition is filed, when there's a legislative determination that the petition is sufficient. There's a required 30 to 45 day period in which you must hold a public hearing in order to approve the NCA. So to preview that, that would probably require the waiving of additional readings in order to hit your meeting schedule, unless a special meeting was called for. It can run those 3 meetings if special meetings are timed. So the setup of this NCA by the village would then populate a board. In the petition draft, there are developer representatives, so representatives representing the interests of the village itself. Then there are local government and local community representatives, and then citizen representatives. And the split on those are shared by the mayor and council for the designation of what would be the makeup of the board. In other communities, we see school board members being selected, accountants, business leaders in the community, as well as potentially even by position, either the president of council or the mayor as a standing member that would switch as people hold those offices. I'm here for any questions you might have or any comments on the strategy.
You mentioned included for the, I'm assuming it won't retro to any current parcels, it would be only moving forward. Is there exclusionary options that not all of them they are required to? Would that be at the board's discretion that gets appointed? Say you have new projects come in that they don't feel that it should fit into the NCA, or is it a blanket NCA moving forward? Like how does that work out?
Great question. So every new project must come through the council. So this isn't a let's silo all of these discussions into a board that is absent council. Every time the NCA adds territory for another project, that needs to be petitioned to council, and council goes through the same process essentially as setting it up. So a petition, a public hearing, and so there are at council's discretion where projects might fit into this.
And they might not, so so if I understand, like you're saying, so if a developer comes, we can choose whether or not they join, or do they have to join? Well, I know it's up to their discretion, like they have to agree to join, but we can disclude some projects, correct, if we feel like they don't fit into the NCA?
Yeah, there's no action in the petition sets any sort of legislative prerogative that the village council holds. The concept that we see a lot of communities utilize is if you need something from the village, then we, the village, need something from you. So if you need some sort of request for some sort of tax abatement or some investment through grant dollars for roadway building or an outlay of sewer connection, then you must come into the NCA. You have to buy into so that the villagers that have called Commercial Point their home for a while aren't subsidizing people that come in for additional costs.
It's a pay to play opt-in tax levy that they can either join or not join, right?
I guess the framing of pay to play, I guess it
Not
was.
a tax bill.
Yeah.
It's a.
It is a tax.
Yes.
Yes,
Taxability
yeah,
associated,
yeah.
So,
Right.
So yeah, it's a voluntary. It's a voluntary petition from any property owner.
but the
Now,
developer's paying, that's what it is.
the developer would be paying for it, and any user, long-term user.
Okay. Do you find that it's good to have residential and commercial both under the same NCA, or is it best to have them under different NCAs?
That's a good question. Mechanically, there's really no difference. The source of real property taxes, industrial, commercial users, and residents pay real property taxes, and so the management of one board from a community's perspective is much more efficient than two boards, and you don't get any benefit necessarily. There's no benefit to siloing out residential versus commercial that isn't saved by combining them into one program. That is the kind of the village's program strategy.
Can you explain a little bit to me about how, just the way that this is used as a vehicle for the village to collect money, because it has to pass through the NCA to get to the village, right? So is the board of the NCA are they the ones that are approving the cash flow through to the village, or is that something that the village gets to determine?
That's a good question as well. So, communities operate under a cooperative agreement between the NCA board and the village that determines the outlay of funds. But really, the key aspect of the NCA is the ability to take that revenue and provide for bond financing to pay for public infrastructure improvements or community facilities. And that is a debt vehicle that is separate from the village. And so you're not leveraging the village's full credit to access that bond market. So it's kind of like a port authority. A port authority can be created by a village, and it is a financial vehicle that you can run projects through without putting the village's income taxes on the line in the case of default. So a lot of NCAs, once there's a critical mass of activity, will take the revenue generated, identify a project, so a public park or upgrades to a community facility, upgrades to fire departments, town hall, and direct that revenue stream to a bond that pays upfront for the money to do that construction, and the bond is paid off through the real property tax system.
Is that through areas that are within the NCA though? Are some of those limited on how those can be used, since the NCA is utilized just for those areas? So it can't be something, unless it's community property, right, village property, it can't be utilized for another community that's already existing, right? So any of that funds that gets generated, that's used for upkeep, maintenance, anything that's pertaining to those areas, is that correct?
Yeah, that's another great question. There is a limit on what an NCA can do. There's definitions of what a community facility is, but community facilities that benefit the NCA can exist within or without the NCA.
Thank you.
And so, if you're kind of looking at a allocation, if you're an accountant, you know, if one area of village has 500 residents and and they're in the NCA, and that's 10% of the population of the village, let's say, then 10% of those revenues could be allocated for improvements to town hall, since town hall serves all of the residents equally, and 10% of the NCA, 10% of the villagers live within the boundaries of this NCA hypothetically.
So is that how the calculation works? Is the percentage of the people that are falling underneath the NCA is the amount of funds from the NCA that the village can use?
So the village, in setting up the NCA, can determine how and when and what the NCA board can spend on, and you can get into a long-term agreement with the NCA that could say, transfer those funds to the village so that the village can run these projects, update roadways, repaving roadways. But it may not be the best strategy up front to make that determination. But there's many different knobs that the village can turn depending on how they would like to see future development invested in the community.
Can we change the cooperative agreement with the NCA kind of like at our discretion, or is that something that we have to cooperatively do with them down the road as things change?
Yeah, it would be by agreement with the NCA. So it is a separate, so the NCA will be separately audited, would be separately audited from the village. It exists as a separate entity, and that has its strengths and weaknesses in terms of control.
I think what you're asking, Zeke, from what Dustin and I learned about them, you can renegotiate, like you can negotiate.
Yeah.
So you basically, the village would negotiate terms with the NCA. They operate as separate entities but together. So, and just for everyone in here, this is, he is part of our economic development attorneys. We asked him to come and speak about this. This is something our village does not have. A lot of surrounding villages do, and it is something that we definitely have to explore. So, just some of you might not understand what we're talking about right now, and I'm sorry for that, but this is something that we asked him to put together for us and present to us because the village needs this avenue. Sorry, didn't mean to, just wanted to get that one.
I guess my last question is, my understanding of NCAs is that they have some right to self-governance with like limited authority over like securities and things like that at times. Can you speak to some of those powers that they would have under the kind of proposal?
Yeah, as drafted, the petition does not give the NCA any sort of self-governance. So the boundaries of the NCA are, at the first instance, limited by the petition. It's kind of like a charter for this new community. So up to the boundaries of what's acceptable by law, then the actual boundaries are what is in the petition. And it's not the intention. It's the intention for the village to maintain control over this NCA by having control over board appointments, and so it would be completely tethered and within all of them. It would not contain any powers for self-governance, I guess.
Okay, great.
And I have two hopefully brief ones.
Sure.
So in relationship to millage rate you mentioned, is there a cap? Is there to that, so it can't be say, hey, we just want to, well, there's a reasonable cap, and there's probably an average that can be utilized for this, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. The petition currently establishes a maximum of 10 mils.
Okay.
And so the board could act to go within that range. It could not go above that without the village reauthorizing an amendment to the petition.
I appreciate that. One last one. How would this play or affect any current or potentially future impact fees for something that's specifically laid out for new developments?
That's a good question. I've not analyzed the impact fee ordinance in the village, but in other communities, impact fees can be waived or negotiated when it's subject to a development agreement, and typically the vehicle to get an understanding that this development is going to consent to enter the NCA is this development agreement that lays out, here's the project, we're going to consent to add our property to the NCA, and here are the public infrastructure items that that this project needs to help support the development.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Anything else?
Thank
Want
you.
to discuss this more at the COW, and then
Yeah.
then we'll know after that.
Yeah.
Start moving forward on it.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Council.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Okay, the Stevenson property, they asked to come back on another date if we're not prepared for tonight.
Can I make a motion that we move the executive session to the end of?
We really need to do it before legislation.
Point of order, though, you made a motion, so you
Made a
can die
motion.
without a second,
Yeah.
or
Seriously, he wants to move executive session to the end. No second. Okay. Executive session, I hereby make a motion to enter into executive session under Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22G3 to confer with attorneys for the Village of Commercial Point concerning disputes involving the village that are the subject of imminent court action.
No, we better not do that.
Motion by Aaron,
Second.
second by Dustin. Roll call.
Jay,
Yes.
Courtney,
Yes.
Patricia, Zeke,
Yes.
Dustin,
Yes.
Aaron.
Okay, we'll be back.
I don't.